All right.
So, hi. Hello, Tom. This is week 10 or week 11?
10?
Okay.
It's episode 10, which, yeah, that's 10. What?
Usually we record on Tuesdays, but today's Wednesday. And you got thrown off, I think, because I've been riding the bus home lately, but I drove home tonight like an adult.
Yeah, that's what I was assuming. You were ready to go by like 9:20, and that seemed way too fast to be on the bus. So.
Yeah, no, I didn't run home, although I did a couple times drunk while riding the bus. I would just run because it's more fun when you're intoxicated, I guess, or something. Anyway, I started to develop like a hip problem, but I've been doing single leg squats that Joe McShane advised me to do, and like those 80s style laying on your side leg lifts. I'm trying to strengthen my hips because I got like a weirdly sore hip situation after walking for like 2 weeks in the cold. I don't know how to explain that one. And that's pretty off topic. Anyway, so I'm home earlier. My car's working, and I got a bed. So life's pretty fucking good right now. Because I was like walking and using the bus and sleeping on my couch for like a little while there. And I'm like broke, right? Because the flights and whatnot. I only got one more of those to do, which is good. But anyway, I got my car fixed, and none of this has to do with fucking anything. I got home sooner. I was ready to go last night, but you didn't. You were a little tired. We usually don't like to record when we're tired. But I was pretty fired up yesterday because there was a number of things I experienced this week that didn't really necessarily lift my spirits in a positive, rejuvenating type way. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start with this. I went home after I got my car fixed because my mom was in Austin, right? Well, it all started with a phone call pretty late into the evening last week when my car was still broken down. And my mom said, "Hey, is your car up and running?" And I said no, so I knew something was up. I guess my grandma was hospitalized or rushed to the hospital or something. Ugh. Now, for a little context, she's had Alzheimer's for like 5 or 6 years. Ooh. She's been laid up pretty much purely laying in the bed type stuff for maybe 2. So that stuff is still pretty fresh. She was she was living in a house with my Uncle Tom for many years, probably 4 of those 6 Alzheimer's years, right? And her brain just kind of cuts off at whatever point she got diagnosed. You know what I mean? Like there's a certain amount of, like if my cousins or I show up with a beard, she'll just be like, wouldn't remember us as being at an age in which we could grow one, you know?
Right.
It's a kind of an interesting disease, but I don't know the science behind it, so I'm not going to delve too deep into that stuff. But so my mom calls. She's been hospitalized. I feel like an asshole because I can't. She has to fly out the next morning to go to this visit with my sister in Austin, Texas, which my cousin Beth and my Aunt Pam, both on the home side, this is my grandma Holmes I'm talking about. You know, they're all looking for this nice Texas trip, week-long visit that they've been planning for months. And so, they call and I can't go. The plan was for me to meet my mom and dad in Ashtabula or something and help get her to the airport so my dad could zip back home to Erie and be there at the hospital.
Okay.
Anyway, I couldn't help and I felt like a jackass, just like I wish I was adult enough to have a working car. I know it's circumstantial and guilt starts to play in when like death, people start circling the drain.
Right.
Type stuff. So I couldn't help and, they got her to the airport and my dad's brothers and sisters stepped up and everything luckily took care of itself. And my grandma is probably headed back to the nursing home. She's not in hospice or anything. It's back to the nursing home type stuff, regular breathing treatments.
Right.
She's got pretty bad emphysema from years of smoking and stuff, kind of being a single mom, toughing it out. Anyway, so there was like a scary thing there. And, I went home on Sunday because my mom wasn't around and my dad was home alone all weekend with just this thought of almost losing his mom kind of. So I wanted to go see him, so I did. And it was nice. We didn't really talk about anything related to my grandma. We just watched football and I heated up some leftovers, which I knew were going to be in the fridge, and we pet the dog and just talked about, like I never really hung with my dad ever because usually one of the 5 people in my immediate family are also with us. We've had one-on-one time is pretty rare unless you go back to the fucking like learning how to pitch a baseball type days. You know what I'm saying? So that was good, and I felt good about doing all that, despite feeling like kind of a lame-o for not having my car ready to be able to help out in such a seemingly dire scenario at the time, a week earlier. And then I left early. I went over to Kevin and Mark's to hang out Sunday night because I didn't want to sleep at my house because that dog drives my allergies crazy. But I left early the next morning, even though I knew I had a window to go see my grandma, and this is only a few days removed from her hospitalization. And I didn't. And my mom even texted and asked if I was going to. So I don't know. That's like a weird, I don't know. I guess I wanted to bounce this stuff off you a little bit before we delve into some of the heavier stuff I wanted to talk about. Because going back to, so she's my last living grandparent. I never really knew my paternal grandpa because he was, he was a deadbeat. He just, he was a famous, he has a, I might have explained this to you, but he's like a C-list comedian from back in the day who was a DJ in LA. And he has a few comedy albums. I think he was nominated for a Grammy for his. Yeah, he had a bit called Ajax Liquor Store. You can look it up on YouTube, I think. I could be wrong, but he was at his prime. He was a decent comedian in the LA area type stuff.
No, yeah, I've never heard that.
Yeah, Bob Hudson. His name was Robert Holmes, but he went by Bob Hudson, and the comedy duo was Hudson and Landry. I never knew that guy. Anyway, so the grandma that's still alive was married to him. But he was never really in the picture, never really in my dad's life, which explains a lot about some of the things my dad has done type stuff. Anyway. And my mom's parents died when I was, before I reached double digits in age type, So kind of the last one to go was my mom's mom. And that's like when you're young enough where you're down with your cousins and you're having a good time and you don't understand what's going on. And you're like, man, I wish I could hang out with my cousins more. And then your grandma dies and you're there for another week because of that, and you like it because you get to see your loved ones more, but you're like starting to get old enough to realize why that's a fucked up thought to even have. And so you start to, you know what I mean? There's weird guilt stuff that comes into play when you start to realize, when is the whole concept of seeing somebody for the last time is man, it's tough. But then, you start to think when Alzheimer's comes into play, in the case of my grandma this week, she wouldn't know who the fuck I was. She wouldn't remember, probably, again, I haven't done the appropriate research, but from what I understand, not only wouldn't she remember the interaction, she doesn't know who I am. She stopped remembering who I was probably a year ago, But then it's the whole guilt thing. So that, I don't know. I'm glad I went to see my dad because he probably had a rough time with it because he has no time for his dad, obviously, who's been dead for years.
You're right, yeah.
Who wasn't in the picture, but the way he and his brothers and sisters talk about my grandma, Depression era, crazy strong woman, right? I mean, like the ultimate single mother, back in the day, feeding 4 kids, somehow making it work, garning socks and shit. You know what I mean? Like kind of the prototypical strong woman.
Right.
Anyway, so I didn't see her, and I feel guilty. Part of me wants to say I didn't want to see her in that state, but part of me knows that's not really true. I just didn't. I don't know. So now I'm wondering, like, how soon do I have to go back to make myself feel, like, better about it? It doesn't even matter how I feel, you know what I mean? Because whatever's going to happen is going to happen probably in this calendar year because her lungs are about to go out. I mean, she just smoked so much, just trying to make it through those days of raising 4 kids solo, 60s and 70s and whatnot.
Yeah, man. I can't even raise myself right now. I can't I can't imagine a family, man. I'm thinking, we're getting to the end of the bag of dog food and I'm wondering how I'm going to afford that. I mean,
right.
4 humans, dude, like what the are you thinking? I don't know.
Right. And she was in like social clubs until she got Alzheimer's. I mean, she would go play bocce. She would go play cards. She would, she was just like, everybody knew Joanne and everyone fucking loved her. Like, I had this thing I picked up from my dad and her that like, and I always made fun of him too, but now I realize I'm victim to it. Sometimes Jesse catches me doing it and I'll just like unload on a cab driver. Like, she's like, you don't have to tell him we're doing distance and like, you know what I mean? Like, how would you not tell the cab driver fucking everything? But I think I get that from like, we'd go to Stone Harbor in New Jersey, our little small town vacation spot, slice of heaven thing we did growing up. Right. It's like a small beach town. I might have talked about it on the podcast before, but that was like some of the better vacations we ever took was driving out there. But she would, well, there's 2 things I remember about her. One was, we never had the money for, boogie boards or surfboards or whatever. So we would body surf, which is where you ride the wave. You make your body like a plank and you put your arms above your head and you ride the wave like you make your body like a board and ride the wave into the shore, right? You wade out to probably 50 yards at most, and you try to ride a wave until it sets you down, your stomach on the sand once you get into the shore. It's actually really fun if you're good at it. She was not, though. She would just like make the board shape with her body, and we'd be like, "Where's Grandma?" And we'd see her just floating minutes later, face down, and she just like, "Oh shit!" Like she died for sure. And she would just come up gasping for air, like, "Did I catch it?" You know, it's like, no, man. But she would like, I don't know what it was, but she could not get the feel for it. She would just be laying there, stiff as a board, for probably more than 2 minutes or so. You know, just like, did I get it? No, Grandma. You probably would have hit shore by now, even if you hadn't. Like, what is your concept of reality even? And and then we'd get back to shore, and this is going back to the talkative thing. I'm getting off track here, but, you know, we'd catch her half a mile down the beach just unloading on this poor family, like, "Oh, yeah, we're just in town from here to PA, you know, just like," and we'd be like, you could tell they thought it was nice and charming at first to, like, meet a stranger who's actually nice. And then, but after like 15 or 20 minutes, like, yeah, I mean, cool, but get the fuck away. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to have a family vacation. And that, you know, my dad does that all the time. Just like, well, if you're willing to listen, I'll talk. I mean, right. You're digging your own grave here by engaging me in conversation, to be quite honest with you. You know, and that kind of goes along with the whole taxi cab confessions thing. Like, well, you know, we're struggling with distance, and, you know, to be honest, it's kind of hurting my wallet to be flying out there so much. And Jesse's just like pinching my arm, like, shut. Like, why the f*** are you telling this random stranger? But, you know, I don't know. Maybe I get it from them. Anyway, Grandma's a cool lady, feeling weird guilt, goofy stuff. But maybe that's just stuff like emotions like that maybe get accentuated when death comes into play or something like that. But
well, I'll tell you what, man. I don't know if it makes you feel any better, but you know, Megan just went through the deaths of both of her paternal grandparents. And I mean, she like quit her job to basically take care, like drive an hour and a half to take care of her grandpa like 3 or 4 days a week for a couple months. And she still felt guilty when he passed, thinking she could have spent more time or done more or whatever. I think it's just kind of like a natural feeling that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Regardless. I know that I don't really have the
that's already so much more than I had even thought to, you know what I mean? Like, I was literally in town and I didn't even go see her, you know? And
dude, hospitals are rough, dude. I mean,
yeah.
You know, when my dad went through that back surgery with the bacterial infection around his spine, he was in the hospital for a couple weeks, I think like 2 weeks. And I drove in from DC to see him. And like, you know, I'm super tight with my dad. We talk like at least twice a week. And it was still like just seeing him in the hospital. It was almost like it was like a different person, you know, and he was pretty lucid, you know, he was on a lot of painkillers, but it was still weird, like seeing him there. So like when you factor in the element of like, you know, a grandmother you might have not seen in a while, kind of going in and out of lucidity, it's understandable. I mean, you know, that's tough.
Yeah, maybe like I don't know, the father figure stuff is definitely unique, I think, because, well, I mean, that was part of my experience this past weekend too, was just going home because I knew my dad was alone all weekend, so I wanted to go at least stop in and eat the leftovers and be like, "Oh, thanks for letting me eat all your food," you know. But really, I wanted to go see how he, you know what I mean, like.
Yeah.
Everything cool? And he would just say, yeah, because we're not that close enough to really get into it much deeper than that, you know?
Right.
Or we just never really have talked that way. It's a very, you know, we share some similar interests when it comes to football and comedy, but I don't know if it's the German in him or something, but he's not much of a sharer, you know? Then again, you know, I'm kind of, I don't really know. He never had a relationship with his dad because the dad was never around. I think the dad bought him a set of golf clubs once. You know, so he doesn't have much to go off of. So he's doing, you know, he always came to all my games and shit, and he cares. But as far as communicating, I think he's just making it up as he goes. And I don't mind his style because I don't really look to my parents to. I feel like some people, maybe they like you talk to your mom and dad maybe different than I talk to my mom and dad. Like some people are very close. Like I would never talk to my parent. Like I would be dating a girl probably for like a while before I brought her up to them, Like I would go to you or Zach or close friends before I went to my parents about stuff like that maybe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just because I'm like, they don't fucking, but the thing is, I think maybe with age you start to learn how much they do know and that you should have been asking them stuff all along. Any disrespect you show them is just an abomination because they gave you life and you were probably shitty to them the whole way and you took away their freedom and shit. But I'm getting off topic. But the thing I wanted to touch on, I think, going back to my grandma was, so we talked about the guilt in dying and things like that. But what I mentioned was she's had Alzheimer's for, the better part of a decade. I might be exaggerating, but more than a little while, right? And at first It was interesting because she would have this rotation of thoughts that was kind of amusing, I guess, for us to learn about what was stuck in her brain for whatever reason. There was like an old Dairy Queen commercial, the Academy High School old song. She could recite all of that word for word. Even this past Christmas, she got half of The Night Before Christmas, that whole poem. She can still pump a lot of that out. Right. There's just a few things her brain hung on to for some odd reason. But again, she doesn't know who my cousin Emily is most of the time. She's starting to lose who her own children are. I don't know how far. Some days are better than others, from what I hear. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about, I guess. I'm beating around the bush. There's been 17 minutes of me kind of babbling, but it's been kind of a hell of a week. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, of course, dude.
Really.
Right.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about, when you play apples to apples, there's that card for Kevorkian, the doctor that came up with assisted suicide type treatments.
Right.
And then there's, I've seen it there and I've seen it in Athens, Ohio, my college town, where there's a bagel place that has a sandwich called the Kevorkian. And the tag is, it's to die for.
God.
Like, ha, 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 right. But I guess my question is, at what point, is it inhumane to suggest that the quality of life versus resources going into supporting a poor quality of life? Like, do you start to, terminal patients, and how far gone do you have to be? And for sentimental reasons of the living that are with it, are they just being selfish at some point? At what point is it a dignity issue? At what point is it just a basic quality of life issue? Pumping air into lungs that don't really want to work themselves anymore type stuff.
Right.
The last time I walked in and my grandma just didn't know who the fuck I was. That was only one, she has somewhat of a clue when I remind her, so I don't want to make it sound like this hopeless bullshit. And again, I'm not trying to, this isn't a sob story for me. I'm just asking a serious question. I guess, because Kevorkian came up with the treatment, right? That it was supposed to be like for terminal patients, and he helped assist in suicides for a couple dozen people or something. I'm trying to remember the Wikipedia page. I just wonder what you thought. Like, at what, is that something that should be made available to people, or is that playing God, or is that something that humans shouldn't really be delving into? Like, is that, I don't know.
I mean, there was a case, I think it was a teenage girl in either Oregon or Washington State, like, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago. A girl was terminally ill, and she wrote this really long blog post I remember reading, and was basically saying, like, this is my life, it's going to be over, and I don't just want to wither away. So, like, on this date, I'm going to end it. And, it turned into this really polarizing thing where people were saying she shouldn't be allowed to do that. People were very supportive, just understanding her side of it. And also, she was fully mentally there and capable of making a decision, with cases that involve, I guess, mental diseases that might kind of slide into a gray area.
Yeah, and with her, if she's lucid when she makes the decision, that's one thing. And, I think I remember seeing that news story where they had a celebration of life party right? Where the friends didn't know how to dress or act or what to bring. Like, yeah, we're going to a party and it's my friend's death party.
Right,
like
yeah,
this is the last time we
weird.
see her, and like she asked us not to cry and she asked us to dress nice, and we're celebrating life, which is kind of a beautiful sentiment, but it's also a bit twisted. And I could see if someone didn't want to attend a party of that nature. That's pretty fucking heavy.
Well, yeah, and I can see, her friends, like it, if I knew that you were going to die from whatever thing, and you had a party where you're like, all right, after this, I'm just going to be gone. This is the last time you see me. Like, I feel like I would obviously be bummed out, but if it's inevitable, it kind of changes the story a little bit. But if her friends or relatives, whoever, are pushing for her to stick around and just slowly decay, like, to me, that just seems selfish,
Yeah. Another side of it is if you're old and you're already out of it, and then the conversations start to happen about whether or not it should occur, who's the power of attorney, and is there life insurance? Is there, you know what I mean? Does then it become a money issue about like, well, she can't die because whoever is the power of attorney could potentially decide for, you know what I mean? Not that every family is that callous, but of course those situations would arise. I can only assume.
I'd probably be surprised how often those situations arise.
Right. I mean, of course it would, and it would be sickening, and because some families just aren't tight, and that's okay. But some families are richer than others, and some families, everybody, every family is a little. Every family has their stuff. I think that's probably fair to say. It's interesting though, because if the person themselves can't decide, and there's a decider for them, that complicates things quite a bit. But it's, could there be guidelines about quality of life in terms of, do they even know what's going on? Are they just staring at the wall all day with a machine pumping their lungs full of air and stuff?
Yeah, and that also comes down to, I think another factor is like that treatment, in America's healthcare system, which is just seemingly only going to get worse. It's expensive, dude. And if that person, the person suffering, if they have, millions saved up and it's coming out of their pocket, like, I guess even in that case, like, whether it's the patient who's paying for it or their family, I feel like if the family's paying for it, they'd be more inclined to let go. But you could also see that, like, if the patient's paying for it, that money that would have been left to the family is just slowly being drained away to keep someone barely alive. I don't know, dude. That's just like, that's something a position I never want to find myself in, like, as any participant of that. But it kind of makes me feel like I should draft up some documents tonight. Like, if that happened, what I want to happen,
Yeah, like, sure. I signed up for life insurance at my job.
Oh yeah?
It's like $5 a year or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's something ridiculously low. And then, excuse me, I had a tickle in my throat. It's something ridiculously low, but if you do die, like whoever you sign up for gets a year's worth of your salary or something. Like, that's the lowest option, right? So if you give right. $5 out of your each paycheck, then it probably sounds like a foolish thing, but just in case, if something fucking crazy happens, my mom gets however much, and if she wants to give it to charity or give it to my brother, I don't care. I trust her judgment. It was kind of a weirdly heavy thought to have on like a Tuesday, or like my second day on the job. Like, oh, by the way, like, if you die, do you want anything to happen money wise, or it's just like, oh, sure, thanks, Lisa. Sure, yeah. You know what? Yeah, let's sign up for the basic pack. Anyway, I wanted to touch on that subject lightly, just because it crossed my mind. Quality of life, and should humans be allowed to say when it's over? because we're already making the game longer with the medicine as is, so we're already kind of playing God to a certain degree. So definitely not something that's going to be solved on this podcast, but nonetheless, I think perhaps there would have been a more dignified, perhaps, end to what's going on with my grandma sooner if we all knew when to gather and say our goodbyes, you know. And she, you know, they grew up pretty poor. My dad did, obviously, because the dad wasn't around. You know, so it's not, there's no real money issues there. You know, she makes enough through her Social Security to stay where she's at, you know, and get the care she needs and you know, all that stuff. But, you know, we're all just kind of waiting for something that's going to happen, probably in the next calendar year. We just don't know when. And a lot of people won't be able to say their final goodbyes based on that timing and those factors alone, you know?
Right.
And maybe it's selfish for the living to want to schedule something like that. You know, that's probably kind of fucked up in itself. I could totally understand that argument about it too. Like who am I to feel inconvenienced by someone's, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What if I can't make it then? Like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, either that person meant something to you or anything to you at all or not, you know, basically. Yeah. And do they have to mean something to you because they meant something to your parents? Probably. I don't know. I didn't have a very strong relationship with any of my grandparents, mostly because I didn't know three of them, basically. I know my grandma was a strong woman, but we never had too much FaceTime. A little bit. You know, we made cookies every Christmas and stuff. I saw her a handful of times every year. Not a lot of one-on-one. But I don't know if it's the German stuff where you don't really get gushy with family or something on my dad's side. My mom's side with the Irish Catholics. Right, they're singing and hugging and squeezing cheeks, and you know, it's you know, there's just more going on maybe, but there's definitely a stoicism and like a lack of emotion that comes with. I don't know if it's the German or Polish stuff that my dad's side brings in or what, but you know, his grandpa Eric, he always kind of talks about like would never really any signs of love at all, but would like freak the fuck out if he didn't know his suits. Playing, you know, some card game, like he doesn't know his suits. He's 7, or he doesn't know his suits. like shun him from the fucking card table at like ruin Thanksgiving for this like 7-year-old just because you know, like just super cold. You know, like you were either respected by Grandma Eric or you were not. You know, like type stuff. So yeah, different era maybe. Thanks for letting me ramble on this one. And well, you know what? Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, is it rude to ask like if you were in this position, like how would you feel about it? Like, is that something you'd want to?
Oh, you mean like if I was dying?
Yeah, or like like is that?
So if we're reliving that Washington State girls issue story, right? I don't think I throw a party because I think everyone hates parties deep down. You know what I mean? Like, especially a fucking death party. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think. I love what this girl did in giving us an idea on how to treat those situations, right? And I think there might be a few states that have legal assisted suicide. I can't remember if like California, you know what I mean? I think it might be like pot where like a few states are down with it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't a punchline. I just am curious. I think there are. Anyway,
yeah.
I think I would want to schedule one-on-one visits, almost like office hours, you know? Just because like at a party, you're never going to. You either catch somebody before you're drinking or whatever and have a good talk, or you're floating. Like with me at parties, I just float and I never have a real conversation with anybody.
Right,
by the time I'm a little drunk, if it is that type of alcohol-based party, by the time I get anyone alone for a minute, I'm probably too drunk to say anything of worthwhile anyway. So, you know, might as well just put me to bed at that point. But usually, you know, you knew me in high school, like floating around group to group, never really just, you know, little bit here, see what's going on, you know, get a general buzz of the room. And I think I'd schedule office hours and really just like lay it down with everybody, you know, like if you know me well, you know, I'm not afraid to really
schmooze.
I'm not brash or anything. I don't think I've ever said to you or Zach, like, here we go, you guys doing this again. You know, I don't think I've ever like been rude about it, but if you guys, I feel like we've been pretty vulnerable with each other and, you know, pretty real over the years in terms of like, if one of us has had girl troubles or, you know, like, you know, certain friends become like family and, you know, family's family in general. So, you know, just take an hour or 2 or 3 or an afternoon, like a Tuesdays with Maury type thing. Like just sit down and really, you know, work stuff out with, you know, anyone who wanted to, really, you know?
Yeah.
There'd be obviously my list of people like you and Zach, and I'm not going to make a fake list now because I'll forget somebody and this will be, you know, an ultimate failure. But, you know, the immediate family and college friends and high school friends and, you know, man, now I'm getting here, starting to make my mind wander just going through this exercise. What about you? What do you think? Would you do the party thing or?
I don't think I have enough people I care that much about to even be able to call it a party. Like, I feel like
you do keep a pretty small circle.
Yeah.
Which I've always kind of envied, to be quite frank with you.
Well, it wasn't necessarily by design at first.
I hear you. I hear you. But I mean, like, quality over quantity is a very real positive when it comes to those types of things.
I think, like...
I mean, there are memes about that.
Right.
Like, I'd rather have one or two, you know, like, all right, whatever Stephanie has. Sorry, Stephanie Hess, you're a nice lady. It's your birthday?
I think I just added her on Facebook the other day. She popped up, and that's just how I that's all I think about now. Like, every time she shows up,
she's solid. And she was in the H homeroom, so we were acquaintances for like 4 years of our lives.
It's pretty funny. But yeah, man, I think I'd probably just want to have like a solid like weekend of like, you know, hanging out with you and Zach. Maybe go to Mad Rose, do some dancing for a night, eat way too much. You know, and then do like the family thing. Maybe the next day.
Would you treat it like Christmas, like where you did a different mom and a different dad party?
Dude,
not a punchline. I'm just curious because I mean, like, your life has been structured that way. So is that a comfort zone for you?
Yeah.
Or would you ask them straight up, like, look, can you guys just come to this fucking thing?
I might try to do just completely separate groups of everyone. Like, if I had like a lot of different friends, like I tend to have like, you know, a couple friends from like a bunch of different circles and stuff. I might try to just like segment off everything, like rather than like everyone all together. Like, that seems like more manageable for me, I guess. A little less stressful.
So you're talking about an A group, B group type situation?
No, just you know, like I feel like the only friends I'd really try to hang out with would be you and Zach. We'll have Aaron over.
Yeah, I mean, if Seth Taylor wanted to come over, you'd let him. I feel like. Maybe not. I don't know. That's a deep cut.
I haven't seen anyone from high school since our last day of high school.
Yeah. Adam, he would probably be interested.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom's not going to exist soon. You want to? You know what I mean? Like, he would come to that. You know, he would tear a leaf off that flyer or whatever.
Right. I mean, I just, you know, I'm also like the guy that deletes his Facebook or disables his wall on his birthday just so people don't.
Oh, you do that?
Here's the thing. Yeah, because
my sister called me out. I used to do that, but she was like made fun of me for it. So I'm like, is it lame to not? I don't know what's uncool anymore.
Well, no, it's just that like there's, you know, like 1,100 people that I'm friends with.
It all
Facebook.
feels pretty fake. Yeah, I feel like if you know me, you know that I don't really. Well, it is nice to get a happy birthday on your birthday, but
I hate it.
As someone who's horrible with birthdays, to everyone who's listening, who is an acquaintance of mine. You know, I have probably missed your birthday either every year or recently. So, like, if you don't write on my wall, if I didn't have a Facebook, if you didn't text me, you would know I wouldn't hold it against you because I just don't have room in my brain, apparently, for people's birthdays. Other than Joey Finati, who is D-Day, December 7th, and Nick Rowe, who is a Christmas baby. I don't even know my own parents. I think my parents are either 424 and 626. One or the other. I don't know what year. I don't even know how fucking old they are. You know what I mean? I know my brother and sister, but other than that, it's my immediate family.
No,
Nick
and
Rowe
you know,
and Joey Finati. I don't know what
is
the
yours
birthday
in
is.
March 9th? No?
No, but I'm glad you didn't know.
Someone's birthday is in March.
I feel less guilty. Who has the time for that type? Dude, Facebook's incredible. I just like, but the thing is, you know, the people like Doug Salawada, he's a good friend. He's a good, nice guy. He's a handsome guy. Can't say enough nice things about Doug Salawato. I'm not trying to be funny. He's a solid guy. What I'm trying to say is, like, he puts a lot of weight on remembering birthdays, I feel. And he always remembers and calls me. And I have no idea when the his birthday is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's makes me feel bad. And then, I don't know, now we're talking about deathbed type parties and shit. I'm like, man, I love you. I guess I didn't love you enough to learn your birthday. I don't know how. What you know? Like, I've tried to show my love in other ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my point is that, like, I can't even get behind the thought of someone just giving a half-assed, like, happy birthday, dude, on Facebook, because I feel like it's just not genuine.
Yeah. So you don't want any half-assed,
right? So I feel like if I'm
either.
like, hey, this is my going out party, people are gonna try to make like an extra effort to be there just because they're like, oh, he's gonna, you know, like die. But like, I would feel like people would feel obliged to be there. So
there's no reason to not be rude. Like, I don't fucking want you at my party. This is literally the last party I'm gonna have. And fucking Grace, stay the hell away. You know what I mean? Like, do not come and crash this party. That was a deep cut. I actually don't mind Grace. She's fine.
She told some lies about my sister, so that girl.
I heard she had a tough time. I don't want to be gossiping on the podcast. She's good in my book. I probably was a jerk to her in high school. I should have said Mr. Gunther. Mr. Gunther, 7th grade gym teacher / soccer coach. You stay the hell away from my death party and the Welsh's mother, because that was not okay. You tore this community apart, sir.
I think the way that I'd want to go though is, I don't know, maybe going skydiving without a parachute over the ocean.
Yeah. Okay. You know, my roommate in college, Danny, and I, you know, back when you were young, and we're still young, but young, you know, like collegey, and you're like, man, I don't even want to get old. Like, when I'm turning 50, I'm doing a parachute thing and not pulling the plug, because fuck it, I'm gonna die. You know what I mean? Like, I don't ever want to be on a bed just wasting away. You know what I mean? Meanwhile, 50's the new 30 or some fucking shit, depending on what magazine you read. And that sounded pretty Gen X-y, what I just said, but you know what I mean? Like, 50 is not that old anymore. But that was the sentiment, right? Like, let's just, you know, the Kevorkian thing for our generation, probably, maybe because things are less taboo or more taboo. I forget how the word works. But I kind of love that idea, Tom, if I'm allowed to be honest with you.
Skydiving without a chute?
Yeah, just like, or like Dr. Kevorkian saline that puts you out quiet. You know, I don't know if you have to splat on the ground over the ocean.
All right, so for the listeners, we just had to take like a 10-minute break after that super uplifting segment there. I'm having some technical issues. Of course, the guy who has thousands of dollars invested into good audio equipment is having all the audio issues. So we're back now.
Need, want, not want, Thomas.
Wait, what now?
I don't know. Anyway, you think it's going to get uplifting for the second half of this fucking podcast, but newsflash, it's not, because there's some other fucking heavy shit out there to talk about, and I want you all to
going straight downhill.
Yeah, dude. Stop now. Turn back now. Unless you're... Again, the tagline for this podcast is, if you're on a plane ride and you have nothing else to do but just try to be at least amused, try us out.
It's the last
So result. If you're on the plane and you're doing what we've instructed you to do, you might as well just keep fucking listening, because we're going to talk about the Stanford Prison Experiment next. Which, if for nobody that knows, and I'm going to fucking butcher this, probably, but Tom, you know, we both took AP Psych in high school.
Right.
More or less, at Stanford University, they did it wasn't even really a fucking experiment, it was a simulation, but you know, they put an ad in the paper, we need guards and prisoners for an experiment, and they arbitrarily picked however many guards and however many prisoners. And they turned, in the summer when no one was on campus at Stanford, they turned one of the halls with classrooms and stuff into a jail, a simulated jail. And the results were absolutely just remarkable in terms of like how quickly the guards tapped into like an inner evil. And, the prisoners allowed pretty messed up stuff to be said and done to them. Even though, like the parameters were only kind of loosely, this is, you're this now. And then they just let them go. And then the guards started acting more and more messed up just to see how far they'd go. Because, they started getting into their roles and the prisoners would just kind of conform after a while to like these, one of the prisoners went crazy and one of the guards was way more into his role than some of the others. And there was ethical issues about how long it should have gone on and, the academic value of it based on it not really being an experiment, but rather a simulation. Anyway, this kind of goes hand in hand with that other famous psychological experiment where, people try to find out whether or not Nazi foot soldiers were playing along or whatever, how like, how malleable human fucking brains are. But there's the one experiment where you walk into a room and a guy you don't know tells you to hit this buzz button and you hear a little bit of audio of someone being in pain every time you hit it.
Right.
And more often than not, people will go pretty fucking far into that process and just, to their knowledge, there's no one on the other end. It's just audio. But, to your knowledge, you're shocking the absolute shit out of some stranger because another stranger is telling you to, like basic order taking. And this Stanford Prison Experiment thing, you're tapping into like this weird evil. There's an interview between one of the guards and the prisoners after the experiment. It's just two college kids talking like, I honestly don't know if I would have behaved like you did, but I'm curious why you did. And the guard was like, I'm curious why you guys kept doing the shit I kept telling you to do. Like, it just became, no one literally questioned anything. It got so weird, like weird sexual humping, goofy, lack of eating, calisthenic type, degrading shit, And anyway, maybe my mindset was framed this week to be ultimately negative because of the grandma shit regardless. But I wanted to bring this up, Tom, because, oh God, it's just kind of an existential crisis type shit. But, the ice caps are melting as is, man. And, not to get too hippie on it or whatever, but that, I might say that every episode just because it's true and everyone should fucking try to do something about it. Like Mother Earth is a gift and we're fucking abusing it. Anyway, right. But with all that said, is humanity just f***ed anyway because there's a little bit of evil inside all of us probably, or at least a lot of us, that given the circumstances we might behave in an entirely different way, which is kind of a totally f***ed notion, but is proven to be true by simple experiments that prove people can just be, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know, man.
I'm not trying to be a fucking Nazi apologist because everyone on Twitter sometimes jokes like, oh, they were just playing the part, right? I don't want to go into the Nazi shit. I want to keep it to these simple experiments about like whether or not there's a little bit of evil that could be tapped into, or given circumstantially, people's, is the human brain that malleable? You know what I mean? Like, how often in social situations do you apologize for someone else cutting in front of you and shit? You know what I mean? Like, people can talk a lot of shit on Twitter, but really, how fucking much of a, you know what I mean? Like, how quick are you to just, you know what I'm saying? Like, anyway, I'm just throwing a lot of shit at you, hoping to, what are you thinking? I guess. Sorry, man.
I mean, there's a lot to comment on from everything you just kind of
yeah, I'm sorry. This episode was going to be, whether you liked it or not, going to be mostly me just kind of saying shit and hoping you would, sorry everybody. If you like Tom more than me, this is not your episode.
Well, I'm also not the situational comedian of the bunch here either. But I don't remember too much of.
Well, this isn't supposed to be a funny episode necessarily either, though. You know what I mean? Like, for whatever reason, these are the two fucking thoughts that have been on my mind this week. And sometimes life isn't fucking funny, and it's fucking heavy, man. Like, is humanity fucked as is, and why the hell are we even? You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of shit that's been on my brain. Like, eventually we're not going to get to decide when we die. And in the meantime, everyone's a little evil, probably. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of been the mindset. So it's been whatever.
I feel like that most of the biggest downfalls in not just even like our modern society, but throughout time has been just greed, especially more, I guess, since like Industrial Revolution. I don't know if that's just a selection bias because that's all you learn too much about in school when it comes to, like a modern currency, I guess. But people just looking out for themselves and their bank account and how much they can make at whoever else's expense. And I wonder if greed is kind of nature or nurture type thing. Like if I don't know, like maybe there's some survival instincts that go into that, where it's, save your own life at any cost, and that could be nature. But if you spend your whole life, I guess, in like one of those communes where everything is everyone's, and everyone like shares partners and food, and if you lived there for like 40 years and all you knew was like complete like socialism, I guess, if you were just released into, like, could you conform into a Wall Street banker? Like, not that all Wall Street bankers are inherently bad, filthy, greedy people, but like, how quickly can you adapt to that role? And I think, just, talking about the prison experiment, probably pretty fucking fast. Because like that experiment, I was looking at the Wikipedia page, it only lasted 6 days.
Yeah, it was slated to last 2 weeks. Things got weird on day 2, and by day 6, it was like inhumane. You know what I mean? These kids were getting paid $15 a day to participate, and just, there was physical violence, right? Which was in the contract to say that they couldn't do that. But when it happened, the prisoners were inclined to just no one really rose up. You know what I mean? Like, but again, the people that were pulling the strings the people that were questioning everything, the people that did question things met with the people that made the experiment, and some got out in the middle because they threatened to sue, because obviously the contract said you could, so the people that made the experiment or the simulation tried to keep things in play for as long as possible to get the results. But I mean, there were results on day 2 of like weird mistreatment and stuff. I mean, in terms of the commune stuff, you sent my brain in an entirely different direction when you said sharing partners and things like that. I was like,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, like, that's another thing, that kind of with that humanity, what's the point when you're in your 20s and you try to figure shit out type phase, right? Like monogamy and stuff, like, oh yeah, also all that other stuff's fun to think and talk about, but also on a day-to-day level, what are your thoughts on monogamy? It's like, oh, well, actually, I'm terrified by most things, actually, it turns out. I am just fucking nervous about existing. And like, when was this supposed to be fun, and when did it get not fun? And I'm just fucking trying not to fuck anything up. You know what I mean? Like, this is so,
Right.
God, the earth's melting, and people are inherently evil, and I don't know, people keep asking me about monogamy and shit, and I don't know if that's a priority. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where to rank this shit, because it's all pretty fucking heavy, and I'm just, I don't know. I just feel overwhelmed at times. And again, this might be spurred by my grandmother's situation, but this has been a pretty, and I don't really know who to talk to other than you weekly. I'm glad we started this podcast. Like,
oh, me too, man.
What the hell are we supposed to do on a day-to-day basis? Well, you did a pretty beautiful thing. You got up, and I guess that's the storyline of this podcast, is 2 guys in a new city trying to make things work. And we're both in pretty different situations in terms of, I'm doing distance with this girl that I'm into and love very much. And you moved with your girlfriend, who you've been dating for a while, years, and you went to a new city to start this new adventure to just, you didn't want to, you went for it, which is something that a lot of people don't have the guts to do, which I admire very much. But I mean, like, some weeks you go to bed thinking different, every day is different. Yeah, I don't know. It's just all pretty heavy. Like, what do you do, man?
I find it so amusing how rapidly we move in and out of topics.
We don't have, like, we're not teaching anybody anything. I guess we're just asking people to come along for the ride we're on. And I guess that's the gist of the podcast. There's not much to say about the prison experiment other than, that and the zapping experiment, there's evidence out there to suggest that perhaps, and again, Nazi shit aside, I don't want to get into that. The evidence of those two experiments is perhaps human beings are inclined to respond to simple orders, right? Which is why people who have big balls and can walk into a conference room and, work their way up the corporate ladder, you know what I mean? Like just with gusto.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like how much could having chutzpah really get you? Well, probably a whole lot in today's America, you know what I mean? And then there's like, given the circumstances, would you behave entirely different? If circumstances were just a little different, you know what I mean? Like, would you just be a different fucking person? I mean, again, evidence kind of suggests that, yeah, right? I mean, like, there are many different versions of yourself that you could behave like, depending, which is fucking scary, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, which version of ourselves are we right now?
It's definitely hard. It's definitely hard to tell how. I mean, obviously, how you would act in those circumstances, but I personally have been trying to force myself through a transition into a different version of myself, and I am. Well, no, okay, so
why
I'm
and what are the
definitely
two versions?
Yeah, I'll get to it. So
okay.
I mean, just like with the business stuff, I've never tried to run my own thing. I've, I had like a management position when I was, like coffee director at a coffee shop in DC. But even then, I was so like hyper aware of not wanting to be the guy that gets a promotion and then is like suddenly a totally different person because they think they're the big dog now. And so I feel like I almost underplayed my role because I didn't want to overplay it. Like there's no like middle ground, I guess. But like I am totally someone who, I've had the same like values and morals since I was pretty young. Like I've never, like we've said, I've never drank, I've never smoked, I've never done a drug. And people, like called me a fit and a and shit, like all through high school. Like, I don't want to call it like bullying on the scale that other people have been, but like, there were some elements of that and I've stayed pretty true, but like at the same time, like if I've been trying to learn digital marketing. So like I downloaded a couple ebooks and I read for like a half an hour on digital marketing strategies. And then for the next like 2 hours, I developed an entire marketing plan for the network. And like all it took was like the slightest bit of reading on marketing. And then I was obsessed with it until like 2 a.m. when I just couldn't physically stay up any longer. And
that's a good feeling, right?
It is, but like
in terms of existence, like real quick, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Yeah.
When you find something you can really dig, it's kind of a beautiful thing, like it's better than sex, although sex is pretty up there always. Like if you find something you're just into and want to dig, like read about and do and experience, it's rare, right? It's timing, but it sounds like you caught something you were able to be excited about for a little while, and you just went right in. I don't know. That might be one of the more underrated parts of existence is when you really find something to dig into, I guess.
Right, and that's kind of like where I feel like I am with trying to do the network. Like I finally found like not only something I love and I'm interested in, but something I feel like I could see myself doing forever. But like, what I'm trying to say is like, it just takes the tiniest stimulus for me to all of a sudden see myself as a digital marketer, right? I mean, not like I have any of the knowledge to actually give myself that title, but like, if it only took me 20 minutes of reading a free ebook to totally shift gears into this other role, would I be an abusive prison guard? Like that's kind of the thought. I've made music since age 12, with you for most of the time. But like whatever band I'm enjoying at the time, you can tell in what I'm writing.
That's a fucking heavy thing too, man. Like being influenced by what you're consuming at that time, like could totally just make you different. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I like I said,
like the fact that everyone goes through a college phase, right?
Except me, I guess. I don't know, man. Like,
well, no, you had your own thing. You left home,
but I guess like my like foundational values have never changed. I've gone in and out of phases of like going to church and stuff. I think that's probably laid to rest now, but I can kind of manipulate myself into a different, I don't know if you want to call it state of being, but like, one day I'll just be like, man, I should start writing poetry. And then I buy 15, Ginsberg and Poe and, Thoreau books. And then all I do for the next couple months is try to write poetry. Like, it's like really big swings of interest.
It's tough to stick to something.
Yeah. And I don't know.
Real quick before I forget.
Yeah.
I was flipping in Albuquerque in Albuquerque at a library near where I worked. I am a wannabe beatnik, whatever the there's a quote in that Thing You Do, the movie, where it's like, hey, Guy Patterson, Erie's lone beatnik, like, which is my dream to hear. But, I was listening to the Hold Steady's Boys and Girls in America in college for the first time when I read On the Road by Kerouac for the first time. Boys and Girls in America have such a sad time together type shit. But you mentioned Ginsberg, and he had one of those beautiful quotes in this thing I happened to read in this Albuquerque library just one day. I just picked it off the shelf. I just wandering through, wasting time, because I didn't have a life there, and I would get to work an hour early. So I'd look for reasons to waste time, and I'd go to the library sometimes and eat Subway. But in one of the lines of one of the poems was, nobody cares when a man goes mad. He is sorry. God is glad. And that was fucking heavy, man. No, you know what I mean? Like, because you and I have both dealt with depression to a certain degree, but nothing too severe, I don't think. But, like growing through your 20s, you used to go mad a little bit, trying to figure it all out, kind of like this episode is representing to a certain degree. But, nobody cares. But, and God's kind of glad, like dance, puppet dance. Damn you, Ginsberg, or whatever.
Ginsberg, yeah.
Kind of killing it right now. Ginsberg, is it Ginsberg?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, sorry, I had to interject because you mentioned him and he's talented, obviously.
Yeah, man. Like I said, I started like wanting to write just like prose poetry, and
Are you still doing it?
No, this was years ago.
Well, I know you kept a blog when you were living in DC,
and I recently kind of have been trying to reboot that.
Yeah, but you were more like I remember the poetry thing because you were writing about the subways and stuff for a little while there, right?
Yeah, I still remember
Orange
almost
Line.
Everything I wrote. Orange Line. I do kind of remember that. I'll try to find it. That was on my Peeping Tom blogspot.
Which is a weird name for a blog to choose if you are Tom.
Right.
I mean, if we're just saying it like it is at that point.
But like the Wonder Years has been like one of my favorite bands for quite a while now, and they had an album called Suburbia, I've Given You All and Now I'm Nothing, and I didn't realize that was like a Ginsberg quote.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, so
no
so I went and he sings about Ginsberg a lot.
I love them even more now.
When I went to the Barnes and Noble, like down the road from where I was living, I saw a Ginsberg like complete collection book, and I opened it right to the poem America, I've Given You All and Now I'm Nothing. I was like, holy shit, like I had no idea. So I bought the book, and it's like on my shelf now. I haven't read too much. Some
of it is just bullshit though. Like, I mean, if we're just calling beatniks what they are, some of it is kind of bullshit.
Oh,
right?
a lot of it is, and
like rambling, and then sometimes they hit a decent chord. And they just had the time to get drunk and read each other's shit. That, they weren't going to war and shit, so they were just hanging. Or something like that,
Like I read Howl like you're supposed to, and
yeah, I watched the movie James Franco was in and got the gist. Something about vaginas and other stuff.
So I guess what the TLDR of what just happened there is we have no idea what really happened at the Stanford experiment, but we're mildly interested in it.
I think we're interested in the whole concept of like, in the process of trying to figure this whole thing out, you realize certain facts that kind of make you upset. And like you said, you want to be a poet for 3 months after seeing a nice poem. And would you have been a great prisoner or a great guard? It's like that Mighty Mighty Bosstones song, you know, the impression that I get. He's like, I'm not a coward. I've just never been tested. I like to think that if I was, I would pass. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I've never been to fucking war. I've never been drafted. I've never written the things they carried or had to even think about that shit. You know what I mean? We're here whining about being 25 and shit, but 26, I guess, now. But
ooh, big boy.
We never really been in the shit. You know what I mean? Like in that movie Rushmore when Max is like, hey, man, Vietnam, huh? Were you in the shit? And he was like, yeah, I was in the shit. Like, we've never been in the shit. We've never been really tested. You know what I mean? We're just sitting here thinking about stuff because, anyway, it's fucking heavy. We're going through our 20s. That's the whole basis of this fucking podcast. And the Stanford Prison experiment isn't really fucking helping our cause in terms of trying to figure it out, right? I'm like, if some people are just inherently fucking evil, they just haven't tapped into it yet. That's kind of fucking twisted, right? Like, are those the people that rob or lie or cheat or, you know, like, I don't know, or is your average Joe, as you know, nature versus I'm crossing my own wires even just thinking about it. But you know, you mentioned Ginsburg, so I went down a different path mentally. Like, no one cares when a man goes mad. He is sorry, God is glad. And God damn it, that shit stuck with me for sure. I want that on my tombstone. I think.
On my tombstone, I'm getting turn the lights off, carry me home. That's going in the will, man.
Oh, staying true to the blank.
Some
That's
Blink
pretty
182
nice,
for you.
Yeah. Okay, so after I do my office hours, pre-Kevorkian, put my lights out type pill, I'm gonna have, I'm gonna inscribe it on my own tombstone. Nobody cares when a man goes mad. He is sorry, God is glad. And I don't know who's gonna have my last office hours session. Maybe my dad or my mom, just to stay true to it, or maybe my brother, but. Anyway, you know, we've covered, you know, when I emailed you earlier this week and told you what I wanted to talk about, I didn't expect it to be funny or lively, but I just, in case anyone hasn't noticed, I have been drinking beer throughout this entire last hour. So if my thoughts have gotten less coherent, that's probably why. But again, it's been a pretty heavy week. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Tom?
Well, I mean, there's just like some random things I kind of just wanted to tell you about, but I thought about adding a new segment to the show, and I think that this might be the right time to do it.
Yeah.
Do you remember like 3 years ago, we were both going through some stuff, and every day we did it for like 2 weeks, but we were trying to text each other with something that like we were grateful for. Do you remember that?
Yeah. We lasted a few days. It was supposed to be like 60 days or something, but
probably one of those inspirational Facebook people told us to do that.
Yeah. Well, we didn't go to an island or anything, so.
But I mean, rather than like that, like, you know, to that extent, do you want to do like a highlight of the week thing? Like, I feel like maybe we can use it right now. Like this is a weird episode. You said f*** a lot.
Sure. Yeah. This was a pretty downer episode. Is there anything else you wanted to get to before we dive into this thing?
Well, you know, I mean, not really. The only thing that I really wanted to say is just, I feel stupid even saying it, but like, I went over on my data for my phone, and I have T-Mobile, so if you go over like the 5 gigs, they slow you down to like 2G speeds.
Ooh,
and
I don't know what that means, but that sounds bad.
God, dude, like the early 2000s must have just been the worst. I mean, we
didn't even know the possibilities, dude.
It took me like 20 minutes to load this page, or to like get through 3 pages just to pay my car payment. It took forever, man. And I just I don't know.
Dial up. Can you even imagine?
I mean, God. Like, God, I still remember.
Yeah, dude. Like that itchy throat noise.
That's what it feels like. I mean, they slow you down to, I think it's 128 kilobytes per second, which is twice the speed of dial-up. And I am just glad that technology never really seems to go backwards. Like, it's like maybe one of the only things that isn't cyclical, you know? And, you know, it's like with fashion, everything was like, it got like so baggy that you couldn't get any baggier. So then it just got super tight and it starts over. Like, what if data transfer just gets so fast that someone's like, you know what? F this. Let's go back to slow data. You know, like, that's never going to happen. And I don't know. That's, I don't know. Oh, maybe that, I don't know. I also wanted to let you know that, I might have told you, I don't know. I bought tickets to see Simple Plan in concert.
Yeah. You had mentioned last episode, and I saw on your Instagram, you and your sister were talking again. Not that you weren't talking before, but you guys are going to remain close and go to a concert together, and I like the effort going into that because family's fucking tight. And
oh, yeah, you know, I did say that, yeah.
I'm happy you're doing that.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. Like, right after I confirmed that we were still going to go, my dad called. Yesterday was, yeah, it started off kind of weird. My dad called and he's like, "Did you hear what happened? Or did you hear about Caitlin?" It's like, oh my God, dude, like, did my sister just die? You know, like, your brain just goes straight to it. And like, obviously he didn't do it intentionally, but he started telling me this story and it sounded like he was like BuzzFeed clickbaiting me. Like, he held me like onto the edge of my seat, like didn't quite tell me what happened until like 2 minutes in. But basically, like, she blew a tire on the 405 in California. And, you know, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, she blew a tire. The car spun off the road. She went over the rails. She's brain dead or whatever. But you know, and your mind just goes to the worst thing. And he's like, no, her tire blew and she just pulled over to the side of the road. And like, some guy was like cut off, so like on the highway, and his only option to not get hit was to like throw the car into the shoulder of the highway. And my sister was stopped there and he just like rear-ended her like full speed, I think. So her neck's like a little messed up. And like, my first thought was like, man, I just spent $130 on tickets. Is she still coming? Like, they're non-refundable, dude.
Right, dude. You would have had to find someone else to go with you, and that's kind of a hassle. Yeah. But Megan might have, but whatever. I just didn't want to think about it right now.
Anyway, Simple Plan, pretty stoked. They were one of my first favorite bands.
Plus, you and your sister aren't like prone to hanging out.
No,
right?
No, not really. I mean, like, when we're around, we get along, and I love seeing her. But like, I don't think we've ever made like an honest effort to hang out. Like, she was sleeping on the floor in my living room for a while, for like a month and a half, and I don't think I saw her that entire time. And then we
was an interesting,
like, we lived like within a couple miles, and I think I don't think I ever just like went over to hang out unless like my mom was in town, or if she was hostessing at like the restaurant down the street, I would go for like free food. But it was never like, hey, you want to come over and watch a movie? And
she worked at the No So Wine Bar, right?
For a little bit, and then she went over to Liberty Tavern.
She's bounced around a little bit, huh?
Yeah. But you know, I guess it's just like not my personality to like try to hang out with people. I don't know, like, maybe I should change that, but yeah, we just never really hung out.
Don't change, man, unless it happens without you realizing it.
Yeah, I don't want to. I'd rather stay home.
Yeah, if it happens organically, let it happen. But I mean, like, you know, you're making a decent little effort to get closer with your sister, which is good. And you have a certain amount of friends that are a certain amount of close with you, and that's good. And, you know, why change, man?
I feel you.
Unless you not changing is keeping your quality of life down, or I don't know. Again, I feel like every corner we turn in this fucking podcast keeps us, you know what I mean? Like, it opens up a whole other can of bullshit.
Sure. Well, let's if you want to try to give a highlight of the week so far, we'll do that, and then
sure.
Talk
this
about
episode
music
or
and
next
close
episode?
It out. Do you want to do this one?
Yeah, dude, I have a bed now, and I'm driving my car.
Yeah, it's
you know
awesome.
how much better life seems when you're not walking and taking public transportation and sleeping on your floor with pillows, trying to make a fake mattress, and sleeping on your fucking couch.
Because you bought a mattress. We didn't really talk about that either.
Yeah, I bought it off a guy on Craigslist. He was real nice. I guess his wife might have died or left him. It's hard to tell, but I didn't ask.
Did she die in the bed?
I don't know. Probably not. It was in the guest room. So. Everyone asked me that. Well, actually, one person asked me if there were bed bugs. It was Mark Valentine. But I was like, I don't know either the answer to either of those questions. But I'm not itchy, and it was in the guest room, so I think I'm good.
All right.
But anyway, he was real nice. He helped me load it. I rented a U-Haul for like $20 for the hour.
Okay.
And moved it myself after he helped me get it into the stuff. He was a real nice guy in Cleveland Heights. I hope his wife... I don't know. I don't know if I would rather her have left him or died, but either way, he was downsizing, so... I just didn't ask him about it, and he was like, hey, man, have fun this year. And I was like, you must have just gone through some shit, dude. Like, I don't know what the hell just happened to you or why you're giving me this dope queen mattress for $100,
Ooh,
like with the stand and the box mattress. Yeah.
So there's room for me and Zach.
You know what I mean? Like, I almost like want to get in contact with him again. I think his name was Bob or Chris or whatever.
You guys are tight.
But I want to like ask him if he's okay to a certain degree. You know what I mean? Like, we had this weird social contract where we entered into an agreement in which I would give him $100 to take his bed away, and he helped me move it. And I was like, "Can I pay you more? Could you help me move? Like, can I pay you $120?" Because I had it on me, and I wanted to thank him for helping me move it into the truck. And he refused, and he just like, "Hey, just enjoy it. Have fun this year." I was like, "Thanks, man. Happy New Year to you." Like,
that's such a sad dad thing to say to a stranger. Like, have fun.
It's so weird. He had like khakis and a button down, but it wasn't like a tie button down. It was like a flannelly button down.
Ooh.
And he just was ready to go to work or something. I don't know. It was weird, man. Like, again, it comes back to like, would you rather have him had his wife die or leave him? Neither, really. Right. But for whatever reason, he didn't have that big house anymore.
Right.
And that maybe contributed to why my mind's been so foggy this week.
Yeah, how did the highlight of the week turn into that, Pat? What's wrong with you?
I don't know.
No,
I'm telling you, there's a lot of factors. You just, every once in a while, life just like, it's like you stare down into the abyss real quick and you're like, oh God. I was trying not to think about that stuff. Galaxy or, consciousness. But thanks for the fucking reminder. Like, tell everyone you love that you love them when you can, or else shit might go south. And people are going to be selling your bed on Craigslist.
So I feel like I try to come up with this segment. I don't really have anything too much to say about a highlight of the week.
Jesse's interviewing in Cincy this weekend. Ooh. I get to go see her, so I'm very happy.
So
I'm trying. If we're using this theme to say that you need to take control of your own things and tell people you love them and try to be your own, the own steward of your own joy, etc. Jesse's going to be in Ohio soon. Most likely. And I get to see her this weekend. So on paper, that's a pretty good upcoming weekend.
Heck yeah, it is, man.
I feel real good about it. She's really nice and great, and I'm pretty much in love with her at this point, right? Like, it's been 3 years, so I can't wait to see her. I am giddy like a little schoolboy, like this is, that's my highlight of the week is
awesome.
Despite this being a rather downer episode, you move forward. You wake up tomorrow, and tomorrow still happens. So if you're lucky, so you might as well try to make, not to put like a weird Sobe cap saying or fortune cookie ending on all of this, but either way, I'm going to wake up tomorrow if I'm lucky. And if I wake up the next day and the next day, I'll probably end up seeing Jesse this weekend. And that's pretty fucking good. I can't really ask for a better way to spend the weekend. So
yeah, it's pretty sweet. For sure.
How about you, man? This was your idea for the segment.
I feel
it was a weird week to start this particular segment, but
I feel like I should have something better. I mean, I don't know. Megan got a car.
Were you started your job recently?
No, the 30th.
She got a car?
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, she started a job which she loves, and she got a Prius.
Wow.
I went to the dealership to negotiate it, and I was practicing my business boy skills. And
business boy.
My car was way overdue.
Is that your rapper name?
Yeah. My car was way overdue for an oil change, so I negotiated a free oil change for my car as well, which I thought was like, I was pretty proud of that,
Sure. It's something random and small, but at least it's like, it's random enough to be like, yeah, okay, this dude, you know what I mean? Like, It's not small enough to be nothing, but it's just like, yeah, sure. It's like $200 cash back or something that day. It's like really in the long run, but still it feels nice.
But yeah, so that was fun. And just today, I went down to Walmart and I pre-ordered the Nintendo Switch and Zelda Breath of the Wild. And there was a open box 48-inch 4K TV that I clearly don't need, but it was already discounted like $100. And I went in saying, if I can get her down another 100, I'll buy it. Just, again, practicing my negotiating skills, right? I got her down like $75. But it wasn't.
I didn't know you were allowed to negotiate in the store.
Well, it was open box. So the TV,
what does that mean?
Like, someone returned it. There's nothing wrong with the TV, but the box was opened and returned. So I almost got a 4K 48-inch TV for like $300, but I think she stopped at like $330. And I was like,
so you're doing okay money-wise lately, it sounds like.
No, I'm terrible. I was throwing that credit card.
Why are you shopping for TVs then? You, gosh darn it, Tomness.
I finally paid Megan back for the rent from the first.
Well, there you go.
But man, this is a highlight of the week. I'm not going to talk about my money problems, but I'm so excited to play Zelda.
I'm so glad you almost fell back into it too, because I was immediately talking about random negative stuff. This is just a bad episode for it, but we'll get better.
Yeah, it's just
we'll get better.
Dark days.
Both of our girls are doing well, and we're happy because those girls are in our lives, and I think that's a pretty positive thing moving forward. And they're gonna,
and Zelda,
Zelda too. But thanks for amusing me, everybody. Tom also on doing a heavy episode, because heavy things are on my mind a lot of the time, and sometimes we chum it up on this podcast, but. To be quite frank, I mean, we've both been to the depths, or at least certain depths that maybe others haven't, and in our life. So, thankfully I'm not there at this point, and I don't think you are either. But, it's nice to talk about some of that stuff and be like, this is pretty heavy, and I'm having trouble dealing with it sometimes. And but it's nice to, Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. And Tom, as always, you're a good friend, and I would be honored to attend any weird, cheeky bullshit party you had if you had a planned death. So
well, thanks, man.
Yeah, we should probably put this episode out of its misery and just reconvene next week, huh?
Can I just do one more nail in the coffin of depression?
Yeah, I'd love to.
John. The song Something by Julien Baker is something you need to listen to.
You hear that, everybody? Follow @_reminiscent FM. Listen to, what is it, Tom?
The song is called Something by Julien Baker, Julien.
Listen to it and follow us and tell us what you think on Twitter.
Tell me how sad it makes you feel.
All right. And that goes for you too, everybody. Why don't you tweet at us and tell us how sad that makes you feel? If you if you haven't bailed on this episode already. But hey, if you're on a plane and you're stuck with us, you might as well listen to the whole thing. So we are the Travel Last Resort podcast, as Tom probably hates me saying. But
well, that's going to be the title of the show now.
Oh God. Okay. Well, we needed a title at some point.
Since the monkeys thing is,
we're trying to sell the thing. Trying to get people to download, so any depressing thing we said to this point was probably not usable. All right, man. I love you. I'll catch you next week. Congrats to your girl on the job in the car.
Congrats to your girl.
Oh, thanks, man. She'll probably get something in Cincy, and things are looking. There's light at the end of the tunnel. We're all the master of our own domain. I'll get down there probably sooner than later. So. Everything's not, everything's not so bad. Just maybe you got bad weeks every once in a while, huh? Cut me some slack. Cut us some slack, everybody. Here we go. We're going to move up and, upward and onward, baby. Here we go. Okay. All right. I love you, Tommy.
All right, man. I love you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.